Allison, you have lived such an interesting life. I mean, to just name a few things, you were the Monroe County Sheriff, you were a public defender, circuit judge, you were the Republican nominee for Lieutenant Governor. And Allison, your life has taken such a drastic turn. When did you receive that revelation that you had to take a different career path?
Oh, the revelation came when I was 16. I just didn't pay any attention to it. But there's a great story of Moses that he walked by the burning bush for 40 years and never saw it. He emptied himself of himself enough to see it. I think that's probably where I was. But the more recent manifestation of when I started to listen came. I thought building a nice, patient political career towards being Attorney General or something like that, and ended up in a board meeting of a seminary I was on and heard a voice say, "This is the second seminary I've put you on the board of. You need to be a student. Aren't you going to get the point?" And I knew how dangerous that idea was, so I said, I think I'll start with Greek. That'll put an end to that. And made an A in Greek, and I knew how dangerous that was. And I said, uh-oh. So I went and finished an MDiv and a Master's in Divinity, and which is sort of the threshold degree that you get to get ordained, and still didn't do anything about it. Didn't get ordained. And a couple of years later, when I went back for a doctorate, the faculty sent the dean to have lunch with me, and she said, "No degree until you deal with the ordination issue." And you don't have to say yes, but you got to ask the question. So I went to call my old friend Bishop Friday in Miami, and he and I had been in the Mario boat lift smuggling priest families out of Cuba in 1980, for which he actually got indicted and convicted, and it was reversed later. So he really gets prison ministry. And I called him up and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Allison, I've been waiting for this call for 20 years. And I said, "Well," so I was done. I took my political career and pretty much put it on the fire, and have devoted myself more and more and more to prison ministry and to prison reform. And I wish I'd done it sooner. I mean, I couldn't be happier or more at peace.
And you have done so many incredible things since you've started this path. Allison, do the prisoners that you go and see each week, do they know the path that you've taken?
That's the great thing about prison ministry, is that there's absolutely no room for bull. I mean, it's a no bull zone, and you've got to come in with 100% credibility. Everything is focused on the gospel. And we have no buildings, we have no money, we have none of the externalities that the church so often fights about. They're just not relevant to us because we don't have them. And so if you show any lack of integrity in the place where I preach, they'll quit coming. They'll eat you alive with their feet. They'll just stop. So you have to be what you are. It's ironic because Key West is very much cut of the exact same cloth. I mean, the one thing I was told when I moved to Key West is you better be what you are, or they'll run you out of this town. And I hadn't thought of that connection before, but that's a place I'm very comfortable.
Let's talk about the faith and character-based prison that you had a huge part in setting up.
The thing that we've done in Florida that's very different is that we've set up faith and character-based prisons and faith and character-based dormitories within prisons around Florida. And the way we get around the constitutional issues is that the state provides the security, but the programming part is provided by volunteers. So there's no state-church connection at all, really. And these people are entitled to have their faith, and they're entitled to have programming opportunities. So it's not begrudging the state anything. It's not any intrusion. They have the right to their faith, whatever that is. And that's the way we do it, is anybody who wants to make a difference gets to come in. So you have the Protestants, the Catholics, the Jews, the Muslims. Tallahassee is a university town, so we have space for the Wiccans. God help us, but we have Wiccans, and so we have an hour for the Wiccans, and but it's a marketplace, and if they can draw a crowd, they get to come back. And we've also got people who are spiritual without being faithful per se, like the yoga folks and the 12-steppers. And then we've got people who are none of the above. We've got the business community coming in talking about how to do your credit better. We've got people coming into the Toastmasters to talk about how to speak better. So it's a whole different blend, but it appears to pass constitutional muster because it doesn't involve the state all that much. We have got 800 volunteers coming in and out of this prison a month, and that obviously is a huge relief to the state financially. And then the recidivism rates are considerably lower than the general population. In the general population, it's about a little less than a third, down around 27, 28%. In these prisons, it's 8 to 10%. So I believe there's a God, but at the end of the day, that isn't faith, that's math, and we're saving billions of dollars.
Wow, that's incredible. Allison, how often do you go into the prison?
Every Sunday. Yeah, I have my parish, my church as a priest is in Wakulla Prison.
What's the most rewarding part for you each week?
The most rewarding is just seeing them show up. I mean, I don't know at the end of the day what it does for them. I know what it does for me. This is how I save my own soul. And that's fairly good theology that you have to give it away to keep it. And I can tell you the high point was I had one of my guys end up in solitary confinement, and it ended up being Christmas. And you're not supposed to be able to see anybody at Christmas, but I'm a pretty sneaky and clever guy sometimes, and fortunately at this stage of my life, usually for the right things, and I managed to get in there on Christmas Day and bring him the Eucharist, and so the bread and the wine. So it was that moment was priceless.
What would you say is more intimidating? Your past life when you put people in jail, or your present life of preaching to the people in jail?
Well, I think my past life, because there was no small amount of artificiality built around that. I mean, I, to no small extent, was in the image maintenance business, and now I'm in the reality business, and this is so real and so wonderful, and my life has shifted very dramatically. So what I found with the image maintenance business is that it requires an awful lot of effort, and at the end of the day, it's pretty hollow. So my life got very real, and that's been a great blessing.
So it seems like you're very satisfied with your career right now, but I know you're on a mission, and what would you say you'd like to see happen with everything that you're doing right now?
Well, the point of all this is in the gospel that I follow, is that the guy I work for, a little rabbi about 2,000 years ago in Palestine, began and ended his ministry talking about prisoners. From the very first time he opened the scrolls and went to work as a minister to the time he was done and leaving, he, beginning and ended, talked about prisoners, and a whole lot in between. So it's pretty important to him, and I think it's pretty important to us, because to no small extent, we're all prisoners of something. Brene Brown, one of my favorite lay theologians, talks about it in terms of a culture of addiction that is in our country, in our world now. And she says, we wake up thinking we didn't get enough sleep, and we go to bed thinking we didn't get enough done. We're kind of trapped into a bit of a cycle that's imprisoned all of us, and we tend to self-medicate with alcohol, drugs, sex, in Tallahassee, football, or politics, or power, or, there are a lot of ways to do it. So it is a good thing that every religious tradition talks about God caring about prisoners a lot, because we may all be there. The question then is, how do we get out? And the formula is as old as aspects of Buddhism and as new as the 12 steps, which is basically surrender, inventory, confession, clean house, make amends, prayer and meditation, go help others. It's not terribly complicated until you have to do it, and then it's hard, but it works. And that's been my ticket to, in the Judeo-Christian tradition, we'd call it salvation. In the 12 steps, they'd call it sobriety. In the Buddhist tradition, they'd call it enlightenment, but it's the same thing. And it's a way of dealing with the world that's very real and peaceful. And the key to it is to give it away. So that's the expression in the prison system. For the people who don't even care about that, it's just the results. At the end of the day, everything that we talk about in terms of recidivism means somebody's house got broken into. And in fact, more than one, because to get into the state penitentiary, you usually have to commit 5, 6, 7, 8 crimes. So recidivism means new crime, frankly. And it's expensive, some of the solutions that we use. Bricks and mortar are 10,000-year-old technologies, and they've got things that work better now. So if we can get all of this into the mix together, we end up with something that not only, by my standards, saves people, but by the taxpayer standards, saves dollars. And that's a pretty good place, comfortable place to be in public policy when you're doing good and being efficient at the same time.
Can make everyone happy in the end.
Yeah, it's really the last area from a purely public policy standpoint, and I've still got enough of a wonk in me to go there in a heartbeat. It's the last area of real unaccountability in government. 35 years ago, if you'd have showed up at a principal's office or a hospital administrator's office and said, let's talk about your results, they'd have said, let's talk about your subpoena. Otherwise, you're getting off my property. And today, in those sectors of our economy, they compare the results. Now, you can talk about what's going to be on the test, as it were, in education, or what's going to be measured in a hospital environment, but something's going to be measured, and it's going to be public what the results are. Justice is about the last major area of public dollars that has a very low level of accountability. The average community college, Florida Keys Community College, has a higher level of civilian oversight than the Department of Corrections does, even though the Department of Corrections has 1 out of 7 state employees, and you're talking levels of expenditure that are close to the numbers that you spend of general revenue on the state university system. So what's going to happen over the next few years is you're going to get a lot more accountability of results than you've had up to now. Up until now, it's been sort of give us the money and trust us, and we'll let you know how it turns out. Those days are getting ready to be over. They're over in education, they're over in hospitals, they're over in most businesses. Today you measure, you do more of what works and you do less of what doesn't, and then you measure some more. That's where you're going to end up going with justice matters, I think.
And that's got to be exciting for you to see all these changes happening.
Accountability is going to be a good thing. I think, how much wisdom have we lost in knowledge? How much knowledge have we lost in information? I think we need to be careful and not overemphasize quantification as the only thing that we measure. There's got to be some heart in here too, and human judgment and things like that. But broadly speaking, accountability is better than no accountability. And right now we've got a system that, to give you some idea of how inefficient it is, we're 5% of the world's population. We're 25% of the world's prisoners. We're 1 out of 4 prisoners in the world is in the United States. We have an incarceration rate of 719 per 100,000. Most of our European and Western peers are down around 100. You know, forget the Canadians, okay, they're a bunch of liberals, but Germany is down around 100, and we're at 719. The countries that we scoff at as totalitarian, like Russia and Iran and Cuba, are in the 500s. So this system that we're we've built over the last, well, really over my career, is not going to work. It's not sustainable at the end of the day.
Allison, looking back on your life, all the hats you've worn, what you're doing now, what do you consider to be your greatest accomplishment?
Oh, I think getting that Eucharist into that prisoner on Christmas morning would be the highlight of my life. I mean, that's a big deal. So yeah, finally realizing what I was called to do and embracing it is the trick for all of us. But it's certainly the trick for me. And I avoided what I was called to do for a long time. And if I can stay true to it one day at a time, I'll continue to be as at peace as I've been.